Hello. I recently decided to start my own channel, and I thought I would kick off with a Top 5 Wednesday video because I love watching those videos, so it seemed pretty fitting. And this month, Sam from Thoughts on Tomes, who hosts Top 5 Wednesday, sort of decided to do a pick your own topic month, so that's actually perfect timing for me because now I can go back and do all the ones that I thought were really fun. However, in preparing this video, I learned it's actually really hard to narrow it down to 5. So I wanted to do top 5 Wednesday best sci-fi fantasy books. And basically all I read is sci-fi and fantasy. So it was quite difficult to narrow it down to 5, but I picked 5 that I think are definitely in the top, excluding Percy Jackson and Harry Potter, because those are kind of a gimme. So I'll just go on with my top 5 now. Mainly I read fantasy. I hardly ever touch sci-fi at all. I don't think I've ever read a hard sci-fi. I've tried to read Dune several times and I just find it really hard to get into and really enjoy. I guess. I'm not a sciencey person in general. I more enjoy like the magic and all that kind of stuff and the world building that comes along with fantasy, which it does come along in sci-fi as well, but not in the same way. But one of my favorite books that I've read recently is actually Illuminate by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. The mixed format, the mixed media format of it made it really, really sort of captivating, and I read the entire thing in one sitting, even though it's 600 pages. A couple friends of mine and I, we read books together every month, and this was one of the books that we read together, and the entire discussion was just about how amazing it was. So we all loved it. I did read the rest of the series, which I didn't love as much, but I kind of wonder if it's because I loved Illuminate so much that nothing would have satisfied me after it. I know a lot of people said they didn't love Gemina as much, but they enjoyed Obsidio, but the series kind of ended on a lower note for me. But Illuminate itself is just amazing. Katie and Ezra are an amazing, I enjoyed reading all about their relationship. I think they're an amazing match, and Katie is sort of just an amazing character in general. And Aiden was just so enjoyable to read, which I never really thought I would think that about an AI character, because I kind of have mixed feelings about AI characters generally. Even in, like, I love Star Wars, and even in Star Wars, some of the AI characters I'm kind of iffy on. But Aiden was just so funny and so captivating, and he really just sort of makes you think about like much broader topics. So Illuminate is basically one of my favorite books of all time now. I will probably reread it when I get a chance, when I can actually get to rereading things this year. This next one is one of the books that actually I read when I was a lot younger, but I just completely fell in love with it immediately. It came out in 2002, so it's quite old, and actually the author is now, she's always been sort of known, but I guess now she's really taking off because of The Cruel Prince. But this is the first Holly Black book I read, which is Tithe, which is about a changeling. It's called Tithe, the Modern Fairy Tale, but the changeling story, if you don't know what a changeling is, it's when a fairy switches a human child with their child. So they take the human child back to the fairy realm and they leave the fairy child with the humans. And so Tithe is one of those stories, and I just completely fell in love with it. And actually this is a really old copy where they changed the covers, which I hate when they do that, but my cover no longer matches the new cover, so I actually do need a new copy. But I like this cover. I like, you know, the new covers are much more simplistic, just have sort of like symbols on them, and this has, you know, the full fairies and everything, so you get a lot more of what it's about from the cover. But yeah, this was one of the first fairy books I think I read, and I've been kind of obsessed with fairies ever since I read it. So, and I think Holly Black and maybe Melissa Marr are the two like queens of fairies. They write them best. So the next one is Graceling by Kristen Cashore. It has two companion books, Fire and Bitter Blue. Bitter Blue is more of a sequel than a companion. It's not really one you have to read if you enjoy Graceling, but it's nice that you can continue on with the world if you want to. But Graceling kind of stands on its own, which is nice. All three of them, they take place in the same world, but they stand on their own as well. So this one is about a world where people have graces. If they have two different colored eyes, they have like a special ability. And our main character is basically an expert warrior, assassin sort of thing, and she's really, really kick-ass. And it's very much, even though it's YA, it's still sort of high fantasy, so it has sort of that feel to it, but it's not like adult high fantasy where sometimes I have trouble with that because it seems to take so long to get into the story, whereas this one, even though it has like that intense world building and everything like that high fantasy tends to have, you still really dive in very quickly, and there's a lot of topics in it that aren't often talked about in YA, which makes it even more interesting in my opinion. And I think if you really like Throne of Glass, because Throne of Glass is so popular right now, if you really like Throne of Glass, you'll definitely like Graceling. The next one is Tempest Rising. I'm kind of a sucker for mermaid stories, and Tempest Rising is quite clearly a mermaid story. It's a trilogy. It's by Tracy Deebs, and I thought it was one of the better mermaid retelling, like mermaid stories that I've read recently. I read it a couple years ago. I read it as the books came out and everything, which is unusual for me because usually I just wait until everything's out and then I just read it all at once. I'm kind of impatient. The third one actually didn't come out. You can't actually get a hard copy. It only came out in ebook form. So ebook and audiobook, I think, which was disappointing because it's not completed on my bookshelf, but it is what it is. Sometimes publishers make those decisions. So the story is about this girl named Tempest. So her name is Tempest, that's why it's called Tempest Rising. Her name is Tempest, and she's half mermaid. Her mother was a mermaid, and she left the family. When they were younger, her mother chose the sea. So Tempest basically has to make the decision between land and sea. And it has a lot of the YA tropes that tend to pop up all the time. The love triangle, and she's deciding between her destiny and what she knows and all those kinds of things. So that does show up a lot, but I thought it was all handled really well. And it's definitely a quick read because you just speed through everything that happens. It's very action-packed, so I really enjoyed it. So the next book is Book of Shadows, which is the first in a 15-book series. There are 14 books and then an epilogue book, but I don't really know why it's an epilogue book and not just, a part of the series. I read it when I was much younger, and as you can see, it's very, very short. It's under 200 pages actually, but it's about a girl who is introduced to witchcraft, and it's very much like the same sort of witchcraft that you would find in like Charmed, where she lives in our world, but suddenly she's actually introduced to Wicca, but she finds that whereas the other people do some of the things and have sort of mediocre results, but she does it and she's super powerful. So it's really interesting. The series goes by really quickly because they're all about this size except for the last book, which is I think 350 pages or so. But the fast read, there's magic and romance and pretty much anything you would want in like a very quick like weekend sort of read, or even a beach read maybe. But it's a fantasy that takes place in our world. I almost want to say it's magical realism, but it's more than that. I guess it's sort of urban fantasy, I guess. But it's a quick read if you are looking for something like that, and it's definitely one of my favorite series of all time. Those are my top 5 science fiction and fantasy books. Most of them were the books that really got me into reading as intensely as I do now. Like I constantly look for series that sort of give me the same joy as those series did. That's all I have for now, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!